Ethnic Media Roundtable Dialog with candidates today. This is supported by CLUSA. Today we will have opportunity to discuss about important local issues with our elected officials. We are also pleased to have a strong contingent of ethnic media who will ask questions that are important to educate the voters. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to bring concerns of our communities to our elected officials. Thank you, media friends, for being part of this dialogue. Share this important information to your community through the online medias, TV channels, radios, and newspapers. This kind of forum will continue in the future, and we feel so thankful and honored working together with each one of you. We have 10 medias today, besides Dingding TV and Indian Currents. Today's forum is partnership with Ethnic Media Services, VIT Press USA, a Mail business newspaper, that's Wall Street Journal in South Korea, and Line Television in North California, and Glink News, 10 Phone Media, and Voice of Chinese America. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Anthony Ng, the Executive Director of CLUSA, to say a few words. Let's give our hands to Anthony.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for coming out on a beautiful afternoon, and particularly seeing the ethnic media coming together. We are so fortunate and grateful to so many elected officials and candidates willing to step up and be the voice of our community. So on behalf of Civic Leadership USA, on behalf of our board and staff and the community, we want to thank you because it is important that we be a part of the solution rather than the problem. So I'm excited and to hear this dialogue and love to see all the ethnic media working together and make our voice heard. So thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Anthony. So next, I would like to invite Vijay from Indian Currents, and he's going to announce the rules of today. And at the same time, I will invite all the media friends to come to sit to the front line, so that will be easier for you to ask questions and interact with our candidates. So, yeah, HP and all those media friends, please come to the front line.
Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, before I announce the rules, can I have all of our elected officials join me here on the stage? Yes, come, yes, yeah. Yes, please. You'll be talking a lot, so you'll need that. May I also invite Vandana and Diana to be on the stage? Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest rule of today is that these two ladies make the rules and we follow them. That's one rule, okay? But what we're going to do is we'll have you, lady and gentlemen, introduce yourselves, taking a couple of minutes, and these are the minutes that has 60 seconds in it, those kind, and talk about two most important issues in your district or in your service area. And after that, we'll open it to the forum. And I assume the media folks are up here? Yes. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Vandana to carry it forward.
Thank you, Vijay.
Hi, everyone. Warm welcome to our elected officials here. The event today is to create dialogue between our elected representatives and the ethnic media. Oftentimes, ethnic media gets overlooked when you are, and this is for all of you elected officials, when you are doing your outreach, I feel that this is a segment that's often missed. So this is a wonderful opportunity for you to also get to know us and for us to get to know you. I did a little bit of research and I have an interesting statistic. I don't know if all of you know that. Did you know that Asian Americans form the largest share of immigrants in the state for the last 10 years?
So it's not a Latino American.
No. And Asian Americans show up at the polls at a much higher rate than Latinos, which everyone assumes is the largest immigrant population. And 1 in every 7 votes cast in California is cast by an Asian American. That's a really powerful statistic, and it's one that I think anyone who's running for public office needs to be aware of. So with that, I'd like to actually start on introductions. Just a brief, my name is Vandana Kumar. I publish India Currents, and I have been doing it for the last 33 years in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, my name is Diana Ding. I'm the founder and the CEO of Ding Ding TV. We are the content and the connection for entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and also the voice of Asian American. So let's have Anna.
Okay, so I'm going to start. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Song. I serve as a vice president of Santa Clara County Board of Education. I have served 5 terms. I'm wrapping up my 5th term, and for 19 years. And I'm currently a candidate to run for Assembly District 25, which is currently Kansas 2 seat.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation to come back here for Ding Ding TV. My name is Kansan Chu. I'm currently serve at the State Assembly representing North San Jose, Milpitas, Fremont, Newark, and City of Santa Clara. Before that, I have the honor to serve on the San Jose City Council for 8 years as the first Chinese American that ever had the opportunity to serve on that position. Thank you. And currently, I'm running for county supervisor. I wanted to bring my more than 20 years of public services experience and to come home where I can be most impactful, to offer my experience and to build a stronger community here.
Hello, my name is Johnny Camis. I'm actually Asian. I don't look Asian, but I was born in Beirut, Lebanon, which is in Asia, and I've been serving as the first Arab American elected official in the city of San Jose for the last 7 years. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to learn a new language. My family has been here living the American dream, and I wanted to give back my time and to my country and to my city. That's why I went into elected service. I am now running for state senate. I think it's very important to tackle issues. I'm running as an independent because I think it's more important to talk about issues than it is to talk about political parties. I want to solve problems. This is why I chose to be in the field that I'm in instead of doing as a financial advisor, which I used to be for 20 years. And so thank you for having me. I also think it's very important to reach out to ethnic media and ethnic people in general. I'm the only I'm the only state senate candidate that actually has a website in Vietnamese, Chinese, and Spanish, other than English.
Hello, everyone. I'm State Assembly Member Ash Kalra. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm very honored to have a district I represent in District 27, which covers about half of San Jose, including downtown, East San Jose, Silver Creek, Evergreen, Edenville, Vista Park, including Little Saigon, in Japantown, and the largest Latino community in the region. I'm very proud to represent that community. Prior to that, I was on the San Jose City Council for 8 years, and I've always done public service my entire life, as I worked as a deputy public defender for 11 years representing indigent clients in our criminal courts. Proud to be the first Indian American on any major city council and the first Indian American state legislature in California's history.
Rishi.
And my name is Rishi Kumar. I'm a Silicon Valley geek. That's what I am. I work in the tech in Silicon Valley. The geeks are rock stars, I think. So I currently serve on the Saratoga City Council. And in my second term, last year was the re-election. We got the most votes in the history of Saratoga last year. And I'm currently running for United States Congress from District 18. And one of the key elements that I bring is the nexus of tech and policy and politics, a unique nexus to see how we can address some of the quality of life challenges that currently exist in Silicon Valley, and to also help address the challenges with our innovation economy. So those are key components of my platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi, and thank you. I would like to give Anna another chance because she only used 20 seconds. So you want to add a little more about your introduction?
Sure. I forgot to mention that I was the first Korean American to be elected in the county. I was first Korean-born female to be elected in the state. And now I am the longest serving Korean American female in the country. So I've got lots of firsts to claim. So does that fill my 20 seconds?
A lot of firsts. You know, we are honored to have you here. I think to start off, I want to pose this question to you. While the media narrative is largely driven by what's happening in the national scene, how does that affect the district that you serve in? Ash, can I ask you to start with that?
The national impact on it. So it's, I think, unfortunate what's been happening at the national level because I think it undermines trust in government. And I believe that a lot gets done, certainly at the local level, where everyone up here is serving in different capacities or has served in different capacities, but also at the state level. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. And we still have a lot of work to do, but we've made a lot of progress as well. And having this unnecessary tension with the federal government, I think, distracts all of us from what needs to be done, including, you know, when we're looking out and trying to deal with so many different issues that are precipitated by climate change or by environmental standards, and we're trying to push aggressively on that, not only for our environmental health, but for our economic health. The rest of the world is surging ahead on clean energy. They're pushing aside fossil fuels, and yet, you know, we are being attacked by the federal government on common sense measures to move us in the right direction. And so I think that's that has an impact on constituents and on our local constituents, because it's hard to separate. I mean, even for some of us in elected office, it's hard to separate, but certainly for constituents, it's very hard to separate what level of government is responsible for what responsibilities each level of government has. And so as we're trying to do our work, and there's a lot of distractions in Washington, D.C., it makes it challenging at times for us to convey not only the work that we need to do, but what progress has been made, what else needs to be done moving forward. And so I think that's unfortunately been a very real impact. There's no doubt that I think the negativity, including the very harsh and negative language that oftentimes comes in the form of tweets from the White House, is really unfortunate. I don't think any of us would want our children to talk that way, or we would talk that way in front of our children, yet it's coming from someone that should be the moral standard bearer. And that's not a partisan thing, because you didn't see George W. Bush or Obama act in that way, even if people had differences with their policy. And so there is a dignity that I believe should be represented from the highest office that isn't happening right. There's a total void, and we're seeing internationally, and I think many of you know this, covering ethnic media, internationally, there is a drop in trust and respect for our highest office, which impacts every one of our, especially being in an immigrant community like we are, it really trickles down. And so I think that offers us unique challenges too.
Thank you. And this question is for Mr. Kansen Chu. And Rishi just talking about the target. Actually, for nowadays, and people are easily to be targeted by nationalism or those who benefit from the fear. So as an elected official, and how do you show that you care about this fear and anxiety?
Thank you very much for the question. That's exactly where I started at a hate crime select committee with my friend here, Ash Kalra, to address this issue. Because we noticed that the hate crime has increased double-digit year after year since Trump was elected to the office. And the immigrant community, people of color, are being an easy target for many of those hate crime committed on us. So we have a hate crime committee to address this issue. We just held a community hearing last week, invited all different ethnic groups, all different religious leaders to address this issue. I cannot agree more with what Ash was just sharing with you. The state, as we're speaking today, has 58 lawsuits against the federal government. Those are pretty much on both sides are using our tax money to pay those attorneys. So that's, to me, it's really, really a waste of resources. We sue them for immigration issue, we sue them for environmental protection issues, and it is really embarrassing, that the state government are spending so much resources and money just to sue the federal government. We should be working in partnership to address the core issue of how we make our state, make our country the best it can be. Now he's pushing down some, the most recent one is the public charge, right? As an immigrant, I want to share with you, I came to the United States as a graduate student. So after I finished my bachelor degree in engineering from Taiwan, I came here with two luggages full of textbook and doesn't speak much English. And this country, this gave me the opportunity to be where I am today, elected to the school board, elected to the city council, and really, really honored and proud to represent the District 25. We are elected by district, but we're responsible for all the people in California. We're responsible for the 40 million people in California. So it's a lot of responsibility, and it's really an honor, and I don't think I'd be able to do it in any place in this world. If a foreign immigrant came here doesn't speak the language and be able to get to where I am. So, it is really embarrassing, to have a president like that and create a lot of divide and hatred among different people. So we need to, the public, all of us need to address this issue to improve the understanding, to have the understanding and the tolerance of other people. The district I represent, AD 25, is the highest concentration of Asian American. Well, this district and Ed Child's district, we're always competing. We're about 51 plus something, an Asian American community. And as we're speaking here, there's 80 different languages are spoken in my district. So diversity is our strength. We need to continue embracing it. And we're a country of immigrants. We need to continue welcome people that come here for all different reasons. And during the hearing on hate crime, we're talking about maybe changing my committee, the name of the committee from hate crime to a committee of compassionate. Well, we need to use compassionate, empathy, love to counter to the hatred that are spread in our community.
Thank you, Kenson. Rishi, you want to add a comment?
Yes. So, I do want to continue what Kansan was saying, and I would like to talk about phobias. And, when you look at the current change in culture that has happened in the country, there is a phobia culture that has been formulated and promoted with respect to, phobia. You talk about anti-Semitism, you talk about Hindu phobia or a Chinese phobia, or you may even call it a minority phobia, and that is not right. This is not who we are as Americans. We are a melting pot, and Silicon Valley is a true testament of that. Because the reason why we succeed is because people from all parts of the world, all parts of cultures, traditions, flock here, and they learn how to team up and make magic happen with the innovation that we roll out that powers the economy, not only of the United States, but also of the rest of the world. So that is a phenomenal story that plays out here. So I'm totally against that phobia, and we need to shift that. Secondly, I would like to talk about the ideological divide. There is a division that has happened, which is actually the rift grows wider and wider as these months go on in the last few years. And that is preventing us from getting things done. The ideological divide. We need to get through that. We need to figure out how we can have a meeting of hearts and work together to solve the big challenges of the country. And finally, the third component is about culture. The culture of the country has been diverted in a completely wrong direction. We need to shift it back to a culture of teamwork, of love, of compassion, and teaming together to make the world a better place. And unfortunately, I don't believe we have the culture today. And that's the reason why when Kansan talks about the hate crimes, I've personally heard from people who have been part of these hate crimes. And this needs to stop. We need to find the kindness and compassion in our hearts and collaborate and make this world a better place. Solve problems. That's what Johnny talks about, Kansan, Ash, we all talk about, Anna, we all talk about making the world a better place, solving crimes and solving problems, and that's what we should do. Simple.
Yes, so Anna, as a first-generation Korean American and elected official, I think you probably go through lots of challenges. What's the biggest setbacks for you, and how can you make change in the future?
Biggest setback in terms of national news, you mean? Okay. So for me, starting from watching how the election results went and not seeing Hillary being elected as a woman and as an immigrant, when you say my vote counts, every vote counts. This is one occasion that every vote didn't get counted, and it was devastating. But tying back to what everyone has said so far with hate crime and what's been happening at the national level, I want to also raise an issue about what impact it has on our children and our students. I have 2 teenage boys, and with phones readily available even to teenage boys, I can't shield them from the national news. And it's interesting to watch middle school aged boy approaching the news, and teenage high school son approaching the news as well. Older one is becoming more and more cynical, and younger one in middle school is trying to make sense out of it, and there's a sense of shame that this is our president, this is our federal judge being appointed, and there's some level of making fun of elected officials and people that are in higher power, and they're trying to make sense. And as a mom, I try to engage in real conversation, but I encourage also school districts, and especially at the county board level too, that we can't just rely on textbooks, but we have to engage in conversations that really matters to them currently as it happens.
Johnny, one question to you before we open it for the other media. This is along the same lines that you're a San Jose City Council member currently. And does really the national politics affect us at this local level? Do you see any evidence of that?
Well, I think like the others have stated very clearly, I mean, I'd like to get off the Trump show someday and focus on the issues like homelessness, like crime, like getting our streets paved, like making sure that our schools are the top in the nation instead of being bottom in the nation. Those are the issues that I would like to concentrate on, but unfortunately, Kenson's right. We're logging on to lawsuits. We're talking about lawsuits for environment. And our city council is constantly tagging on. I think that some of the lawyers may correct me, something like a amicus brief or something. We're constantly doing these things, suing the federal government. I really want to get off that treadmill. I think we need to focus on fixing the problems. I think it has built a lot of distrust. A lot of people with good conservative views are not being heard. I know we talked a lot about how Democrats feel, but I think that Republicans, quite frankly, don't think they have a voice whatsoever, and nobody trusts them anymore because they have an R next to their name. And quite frankly, we have to have a dialogue between people so we could solve problems. Let's not just talk about it, let's do it. And I think the state legislature needs to have somebody who could bridge the two parties. I'm a former Republican. I'm also a former Democrat. So I understand things, and I just want us to solve problems. And quite frankly, all this other stuff, a lot of this other stuff, not all of it, is distracting us from solving things.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll open it up for questions. Okay. We'd like you to say your name and the media outlet that you represent.
So I get the privilege of first question. Thank you. Name is Vijay Rajvaidya from India Currents. I have a question for you, Ash. In following up on what all of you said as regards to this focus on national issues, I want to ask, we have our problems right here. We have problems in the utility sector, right? Utility commission, power offs, infrastructure, so many other things going on here. How are you keeping your focus and your voters, and I'm one of them, on these issues?
Well, it's challenging, there's no doubt, and I think that part of the issue is that you see the same influence of money in politics, frankly. I think that we need to get the influence of wealthy corporations and money out of politics. I think they dictate far too much of what happens, and so we get something like a PG&E that's allowed to operate as an investor-owned utility. I'm glad to say that I'm one of, I believe, only 4 assembly members that voted against the 2 PG&E bailouts over the last couple of years, because I think we have a broken model. And so it's hard with all that happening to also focus on what we need to do here. We absolutely have a crisis with climate change, but what we're seeing with the wildfires is both the crisis of climate change and the irresponsibility of a utility coming together. Because they've had decades, some of those lines are over 100 years old. They've had decades to fix them, but when their focus is on profit of investors versus whether they should shore up or secure or replace some of their equipment, they're certainly going to side with the investors, especially if the state keeps bailing them out. And so it's challenging, and I'm glad you brought up the issue of the utilities. In the meantime, while we are stuck, like I said, I'm only 104, that means clearly there's been a choice to continue to try to work with PG&E and other investor-owned utilities. So in the meantime, we have to do the best we can to hold them accountable, to make sure when they do these power shutoffs, that there's some sense of accountability as to why and when they do them, and to ensure that there's some compensation given to those that suffer because of them. And so that's a major issue that I think is on top of mind, obviously, right now with the wildfires raging, and we certainly want to do whatever we can to support the victims. But on larger issues, the same thing occurs. I mean, if you look at the housing crisis, we have a very, and California has because of the cost of living and the housing costs is what makes California's poverty level high. If you exclude the housing costs, it's not the case. So we have to do more on housing costs. And the reality is that whenever we try to do something on housing costs, including trying to ensure that we have more affordable housing built, we get resistance from builders, from the developers, and just now in San Jose, they gave $60 million for market rate housing, which is unacceptable. We have to do more. We have to do more to incentivize affordable housing and have more resources to ensure that we're doing more than we have been. It's not easy. And I got to tell you that San Jose does far more, San Francisco, Oakland does far more in building affordable housing than a lot of other jurisdictions. And so I think that everybody in the region has to play a part. Every city has to play a part in building housing for everyone. It can't just be San Jose's responsibility. It can't just be San Francisco's responsibility, because we're all benefiting and contributing from the rise in housing costs, property values going up, from being in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And so those are some of the thoughts, because the issue was asked of what a couple of the major issues in the district or the community are housing and how do we deal with the utility and power sustainability, I think are two major issues that we can do a lot on. I do think that in some places like San Jose, in talking about and I know the city council has recently moved in doing more independence of our utility. I fully support the mayor and council in doing that, and I think they unanimously voted for that. So good steps are being made, but the state has to support and not allow PG&E and other utilities to block local jurisdictions from doing the right thing.
Okay. So this question comes from a student in San Jose State. She's a friend of mine. Her name is Monica Mallon. And she's been a fierce advocate of transportation routes, bus routes in San Jose. And many of you may already know her from some of the work she's done. So she writes, the biggest issue has been that they have been cutting bus routes and not improving bus service in any way. We are interested in getting more service hours, more routes, better frequency, and bus rapid transit on El Camino and Stevens Creek. The solution my transit group has been presenting is a reallocation of Measure B 2016 funds from highways to transit operations. A single highway interchange could fund over 100 buses for an entire year. What is your response to this young person?
Well, I can tell you that several taxes have passed. One of them was Measure B, which I supported the VTA's measure that provided tax revenues for transportation services and to bring BART down to San Jose. In fact, we've passed 4 tax measures for BART and other public transit services. When it comes down to it, what really needs to happen at VTA, because I've served on it for 6 years, is that people need to write it. They don't have any box recovery. There is no fare box recovery to mention. It's like 8% to 10%. Other places around the world are like 90% or 80%. One of the reasons why is because it takes our buses and our light rail actually takes longer, even with traffic, than to get into a car. And that has to change. Otherwise, nobody's going to, you could keep pouring money down the same hole, and if nobody rides it, you're still going to have the same problem. While working on VTA and City Council, I made sure, for example, that light rail had signal priority on First Street. Okay, so now it helps that light rail doesn't have to stop when it's going down First Street. And so now the ride is about 2 or 3 minutes faster than it would be without that. We need to look for a lot more ways to increase the speed of buses and public transit so that it could be competitive with cars. Otherwise, no one's going to get in them. And so it's not just about money. Other things need to happen. We have passed 4 taxes.
And I served with Johnny on VTA, and I agree with the sentiment that we have. I think light rail, when it was built way before any of us, decades ago, I think it was very poorly designed. And the speed is far too low. It goes through the slowest portion through downtown, 5 miles per hour, and people aren't going to use it if it's going to triple or quadruple their commute time. Now, unfortunately, since vehicle traffic has gotten so clogged up, now light rail is looking more competitive than it was before, but that's not the right reason why. We do need to speed it up. We do need more bus, as the students indicate. But there is a cultural change. We're seeing younger people more willing to use public transit. But again, it's got to be somewhat more efficient in terms of timing. So I think that prioritizing routes, being smarter about it, more bus rapid transit is the way to go than building out too much of light rail, because light rail tends to be a lot more expensive. But I think BRT or other bus routes can be helpful.
Hi, my name is Roger Living Chen. I'm a founder of a Chinese media called Voice of Chinese American. Yeah, so I try to represent a Chinese American. So we do vote, okay. And I would like to know the reason I have a personal experience. Yesterday, I just moved to the San Francisco. The reason because I met Mayor, Ellen Chow by accident, and she asked me to support her, to vote for her. But I said, I live in Mountain View. Then I said, okay, I can move to San Francisco. I did yesterday, so I will vote for her. The reason I have passion to support, athlete, a minority to enter, government, to serve for government. So my question is simple, what's the best way, for voter to know you better, to know your plan to serve the people vote for you? Yeah.
Sure. So if you can repeat the last part of the question, what's the best way for a voter to
access your office and how to know you, the plan,
Why
serve,
they should vote for you?
your community, for the, yeah. How to access, yeah.
For voters to know and why they should vote for you.
Yeah.
Sure. I think the first efficient way to know about a candidate, as I'm a candidate currently running for assembly seat, would be to visit my website. But at the same time, for the public to engage is to attend panel discussions and local interviews that are taking place by the local clubs and League of Women Voters and etc. And I think from a candidate's perspective, we definitely have to go out there in the community, attend functions, and also knock on doors. And if I can find voters like you who would move into my district to support you, I think I have it in. Thank you.
Well, you are only one person. I don't think you can move from city to cities. But I think it's always good that we can have the discussion like this, and also we get the voice out, and we send to our community, and also for people to dialogue directly with our candidates.
I want to answer that. I think it's the responsibility of ethnic media to come to us more. Other media reaches out. Like I get interviews from CBS or whatever, they come to us. And it's important, if you want to represent and if you want to educate the Chinese population, you need to come to us. We're elected officials. We have lots of things to share with you. I could tell you some personal experience. I think I've worked with 1 or 2 media groups here when we're talking about very important issues, higher taxes or the sanctuary county policy or some of the other stuff that was happening in the area. Very few ethnic media were involved in those issues, but CBS, NBC, KTVU, even Telemundo was there. It's important for the ethnic media to come reach out to us. And yes, website, of course. There are also debates being scheduled. I actually post the debates that I have on my website so that you can learn many specific questions that you may not have thought of. And so we post them on the Facebook and the other social media that we have.
Johnny, I want to counter something that you just said.
Okay.
You're saying ethnic media should come to you. Oftentimes, ethnic media are actually run by small organizations
Yes.
with very limited means.
Yeah.
I think the onus is on you, the elected people, and
So that's
you
why
have
you're
marketing dollars that you're going to be spending. And I think you should not spend it only on the mainstream media. You need to spend
Exactly.
some of that marketing dollars
Yeah.
on ethnic media. Get them
agree.
to know you.
Now,
You know.
Again, I'm not talking about just for the campaign. I'm talking
No,
about
I think in elected officials in general, whether the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, I think they need to pay attention that 60 million voters trust ethnic media. They get their news from ethnic media. If you are not spending your dollars on them, there is no reason for them to come to you.
So have you spent your dollars on the ethnic media?
I haven't spent any money on any media thus far,
Yeah.
except for my website.
Yeah.
And we are looking for ways to put forward our campaign dollars. Now, the larger the campaign, the more that they could spend. And it also depends on how much money you generate. If it's a shoestring budget, you're not going to get a whole lot of media.
Yeah.
I'm very a frank person. I can tell you that, if you in an assembly member's campaign, unless you raise over $500,000, you're not doing a whole lot of media. You're doing maybe a couple of mailers. And if you do them, and if you translate them, that's even better. But that's why the first thing I did was to make sure that my website was in multiple languages. And I was hoping that and I've also been trying to reach out to media to talk to them, but I don't know all of you. And it's good that we're here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's good that we're here, then we can start this dialogue in the future and have more interactions then. So the questions from HK?
Hello, my name is HK Shin from LBG's newspaper, South Korea. And I came here like 3 months ago and from my country. And the image of Silicon Valley is always the hub and the heart of the innovation, right? So when we think about outside of the world, Silicon Valley is like when you hit the road, the autonomous vehicle will be there, and the drone will be flying, and all the innovations are there. There is the image of the most of the outside world when they think about the Silicon Valley. But as soon as I got here, the first news I saw was that a Californian, state assembly passed a regulation on the Uber and Lyft, and it seems like the democracy and the innovation has some sort of a conflict, and there is some intersection between the innovation and the democracy, and the people are always talking about the artificial intelligence, but somehow we have to regulate it because it will cause us so much harm, just like a nuclear weapon, right? So at the heart of the innovation, as a representative of the people, and what would be your response to the people who are really, in some part, who are really want to advance in terms of the innovation, but in the other part, people want to keep their values and keep their humanity. So what would be your response? And I would like to ask Anna, what the education can play the role between the conflict, how the education can contribute to solve the conflict.
So there's a couple of things. And I think you raised an excellent point, because I think there's always a tension there, as there really should be, between especially being here in Silicon Valley, certainly innovation. I mean, I've grown up here. I've lived here since '78, and so I've seen Silicon Valley grow before my eyes, literally. And what the legislature actually did not write a law specific to the gig economy. What happened was in 2018, the Supreme Court ruled in a case called Dynamex that they created a formula as to what qualifies as an employee and as an independent contractor. It applied to all industries. So what the legislature did in a bill, AB 5, authored by Lorena Gonzalez, was if the legislature did nothing, then this test would have applied to every single industry in the state of California. What the legislature did through that piece of legislation, it created exemptions for many industries, like realtors, for example, emergency room doctors, direct sellers like Amway and Avon, and so on and on, insurance dealers, insurance brokers, CPAs, accountants. It created very clear-cut exemptions that the legislature, through the author, Lorena Gonzalez, believed that that case didn't apply to. And so it was a judgment call, because that case really dealt with misclassification. What the court said that is over the last 40 years or so, we've seen more and more push towards independent contractors as a way of getting around our labor laws. So when you have employees, you're supposed to pay, just like anybody that's an employer, payroll tax, workers' comp, overtime, minimum wage, all those rules that apply to every hardworking business owner should apply to everyone. And so what the court said was that the court adopted a test called the ABC test, which is used by other states as to how to determine if someone works for you or is a truly independent contractor. So the reason why Uber, Lyft, and other companies are worried about it naturally is because it's very clear based upon that test that their drivers work for them. They can call them independent contractors, but in actuality, based upon that Supreme Court case, they work for them. The reason why that's important as a state is because if something happens to those drivers, they don't have workers' comp, they don't have health insurance, they're not getting paid enough to survive. And so the reason why that case is relevant is because, and I'll say, look, it's not about talking about innovation, it's using a software platform to get around workers' rights. That's what the issue is. And frankly, being here in Silicon Valley, we have the most egregious income inequality in the nation. And so we have to recognize that when we talk about the housing crisis, that's a big part of it. And so it's not about stifling innovation, it's about ensuring that no one gets around the laws that every other business has to comply with, whether you're McDonald's or whether you're Target or AT&T. And have people, you have to comply with these laws. And so there has to be a way of allowing that innovation, but not doing it on the backs of the workers. So that's what that court case was about. And so the legislature essentially codified, through that bill, codified the court case, but created some common sense exemptions so that, because if the legislature didn't, there would be dozens of industries that would have to comply, that it totally didn't make sense.
Thank you, Ash. Yes, let's give this opportunity to Anna.
If I may just comment on that just briefly. There's always a dichotomy that currently exists between a free-flowing innovation economy versus throttling that, right? And it actually played out in the presidential election with Cambridge Analytica. I don't know if any of you have seen The Great Hack, but it really talks about how the data analytics and the citizen data actually ended up influencing the political process. So how do we help address that? And it's actually very simple, because we really want a free-flowing innovation economy here. That is extremely important, because this is the reason why Silicon Valley has done very well over the last few decades. But at the same time, when we look at throttling it, what would be the purpose of the throttling? It's very simple. It's very simple. It's based upon protecting citizens. That's probably the only reason why we need to throttle that innovation economy to be there to protect the people. So when you look at data privacy, it's a huge challenge. And that should have been addressed maybe like 10 years back, 15 years back, because there were millions of people who were being harnessed for their data. And it behooves the elected leaders to be in front of these types of challenges and addressing it. And that's really what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, yes. Well, let's shorten our answers, and we can have more medias to ask questions. And please, Anna, you please go ahead.
안녕하세요. 좋은 질문 해주셔서 감사드립니다. Thank you for that excellent question. So you can see here, we're very passionate about this issue. And as a County Board of Education member and as a mom, I see this as an issue of haves and have-nots. So innovation and all the glitz that you mentioned about Silicon Valley is great. And that made all of us who own homes millionaires out of anyone. But it leaves behind those who haven't. So I don't own a home. I'm not a millionaire, but we have many, many millionaires. And as you mentioned, Uber and all the innovative corporates, it does make rich innovators and haves, but it leaves behind those have-nots. Uber drivers are suffering with 2 jobs and 3 jobs. I'm an insurance agent. I wish we were included in that category, but we were not for good reasons. So let me share with you what kind of impact it has on school board or education or student level. At the county board, we hear interdistrict transfer appeals. What that means is parents appealing decisions of the local districts of wanting to send their children outside of where they live. And on a given night, we could be hearing sets of hearings that one set of parents wants to send, they live in Santa Clara, but they want to send elsewhere because they work in Palo Alto. And then they live in San Jose, but they want to send their children to Santa Clara because they work in Santa Clara and the cost of living is prohibiting them from wherever they work. So we created a community where we can't afford to live where we work. And it's a constant vicious cycle. And as you know, recently Governor signed a banning the shaming of the lunch cost issue at schools. And so we're not talking about food scarcity, but it's a real issue. And when we're talking about housing and policy and creating ways to make affordable housing, it's actually impacting students at the levels where they're trying to attend, where parents can be near them, sometimes with health issues. And you asked about what education issues can be contributed in the innovation of in the Silicon Valley. We have been concentrating on STEM education, science, math, and even also incorporating art, and we call it STEAM. And we've been very mindful about the achievement gap. So for over 10, 20 years, we've been talking about closing the achievement gaps. And there are gaps in how our students achieve in different ethnicities. So we have to continue the dialogue. You know, we had a very grandiose, ambitious goal of closing the achievement gap by 2020. We didn't get there, but we have to try, and we have to continue to try. And thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, Johnny, you got a different opinion?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, this was a country that I came to live in, and we struggled hard. My parents actually were entrepreneurs. Mom put herself through a college, so did I. We struggled hard, we worked hard, and we lived and got the American dream, which is own your own house, own your own business. But I think regulation, over-regulation, and over-taxation has put us in the place that we are. It is extremely hard to build housing. And a lot of it has to do with some of the state regulations around environmental impact reports. If one building goes to another infill building in downtown San Jose, they have to do a $200,000 study and wait 6 to 9 months to get that done, and then get approvals and blah, blah, blah. All these things cost money and take a long time, where time is money. So we are responsible for some of the housing crisis that we're living in, because we overregulate and overtax. And I think that we need to look at this issue in a different light. You know, we keep trying to regulate and tax and expect different results. And I think it's time to have different opinions at the state legislature, because these things just haven't worked. We keep getting higher prices because we're not building enough. Our corporations are starting to move out of the state because they're over-regulated. And I'm not saying that every regulation is bad, but you have to look at both sides of the issue. You cannot just look at the one side of each issue. You have to look at some of the consequences of the laws that we're creating. And I don't want to go into huge details, but I got lots of ideas on laws that are affecting the housing crisis, for example.
So I'm asking the second question. This one's from me. My name is Jaya Padmanabhan, and I work for Ethnic Medias Services. And this question is actually bringing you back to one of the topics that is being debated on the national stage right now, which is Facebook, which is something that you just mentioned, regulation. Should Facebook be a technology gatekeeper for political speech, or for free speech? What is your opinion?
I mean, it's not a media outlet. You know, they're using analytics, they're charging, and so if they want to be the media outlet, they should become one, but they're not. And so no, Facebook shouldn't be deciding what we see, who sees it, and how much they see it based upon their analytics and based upon how much they're getting paid. But the problem is, and it goes back there's always going to be a conversation between how large you let these companies get, and we're in a new gilded age. And so the suggestion that somehow it's regulation and taxes holding down the 5th largest economy in the world, rather than a complete depletion of wages. Over the last 40 years, wages have been completely flat or gone down. The wealthy have done incredibly well, including those that control Facebook and other platforms and technology companies. So I mention that because it's easy to say, oh, it's taxation and regulation. But the reality is that productivity has gone up, wealth has gone up dramatically, profits have gone up, wages have not. And so it's harder and harder for people to survive. And so this actually factually true, that over the last 40 years, we've seen the wealthiest do extremely well, even in California, while the working class and middle class have struggled to keep up. And so I have to mention that because it's easy to say it's regulation, it's that. Trust me, the wealthy and these corporations have a very strong voice, including in Sacramento. And so that's why you'll see taxes, but not payroll taxes, not wealth taxes, not estate taxes. You see general taxes because those are regressive and easier for the corporations to get behind and sell.
Actually, let me answer that. I don't disagree with Assemblymember Ash Kalra about the Facebook issue. I think we do need to have some regulation on Facebook. And I don't disagree that it's the easiest taxes to pass are the ones that apply to the middle income earners, because that's all we're doing. But there is a huge amount of regulation, and even he has to admit that the regulations itself has reached a point where builders are not building housing as much as they could be. There are a lot, and I didn't talk about inequities or wages, because I think we should be all have equal opportunities, and we need to work on education gaps and the other things that were discussed. But the fact of the matter is, it is extremely regulated here, especially the building industry, which is the #1 reason the costs are going up in housing.
Okay, I just wanted to add something about Facebook to touch upon Ash's point. And essentially, Facebook is a business model. It is a business model, and they are following the framework of their business model. They're in the business of making money. When you look at free speech, I think what Mark is talking about is the ability for people to show up in Facebook and talk about what's to their heart's content. They would like to express that. That's really the context of free speech he's talking about. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's the business model of Facebook. Now, if you want to go out and regulate because Facebook is doing something wrong, okay, then we should roll out some policies and procedures to make sure that Facebook doesn't do that. So at the end of the day, Facebook is not journalism. It's actually a company which is there for profit. It's a social media company. It's actually perhaps creating happiness for people. People are very happy with Facebook. So it's catering to a certain aspiration of society today. Now, if they are doing something wrong, are they violating certain norms and policies? Then that needs to be taken care of. And if they are not, and if we believe that they are perhaps doing something wrong, then we need to roll out those checks and balances and make sure that those policies are rolled out to ensure that it doesn't happen. Simple as that.
Well, thank you. So let's hear the questions from Vietnamese media.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Ding Ding TV that setting up this forum for us. I don't have any question, but I would like to express my feeling, and also on behalf of Vietpress USA Media and also Link Media, I must thank you for all your support, your do all the best thing for our community during this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of your time commitments. Do you have time to take more questions, or we can?
Yes, we got 15 minutes left. So any questions? And yes.
Well, I don't want to hog the mic.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Georgia. Because today our topic is ethnic media. From my understanding, it's minorities. But in California here, white is only 38%, Latino not be 43%, and Asian 15%. So that's all minority is no longer minority. If we look. Like in the United States, the white population worldwide, Europe, Australia, the white population is protected. So in the long run, the next few decades, in the United States, white population should be less than 50%. But our population is only contributed by the illiterate.
声音可好了，我这没有，全部没声音啊。不是那边那个会没声音啊。
So I'd like to, am I on? I don't think I'm on. I'd like to come back to the topic of free speech, but I want to make a kind of an example first. I do consulting, and among the things that I do is preventing sexual harassment training. And Facebook will not post my notices about it because they tell me I am not media and I'm not authorized to talk about sex, I guess. I can't get past it. But that was just a comment. But I do want to come back to free speech. I'm old enough to recall, and some of you may not, that in Berkeley in the 60s was the free speech movement. And we here in California prided ourselves on the ability to have conversations, dialogue, to talk about our disagreements and talk about them civilly and to learn from each other. We are at a point right now where you have complete censorship, safe spaces. The college campuses are not allowing free dialogue of any kind. And it seems to me that it's like a one-sided position that we're getting a communist country in the sense of censorship. We're not allowed to voice our opinions, to have dialogue. And so my question really around that, oh my God, God has spoken. My question around that really is to come back to how can we get back to being friends, to talking to each other, to being able to learn from the disagreement rather than being as polarized as we currently are. And Kenson, I know you're working towards that.
Definitely. Is it on? Hello? Is it on? Okay, you can hear me. Yeah, I know. My understanding that a lot of time, you know, there's a rally in Berkeley. They're trying to tamp it down because of two sides are being too emotional. So in order to host a free speech rally, it's going to cost the university a lot of money for their police and for the public safety reason. So they discourage that. But I guess the free speech is still the rule of the law in this land. You know, I don't know that we have in the state legislature have any bill to tamp down the free speech. So, but your point, I think is very well taken in the sense that the two sides, and both sides, or there may be a third side, they're getting too emotional, and there's a real hard, very, very strong divisive in our community. That's the issue that we need to continue to address. You know, I'm hoping that.
Faculty is being fired from universities, stifled in universities from having less than for being on the quote other side. I don't know how to say that in the short words. That I'm a Republican, as you know. Canson and I met when I ran for assembly in 2012 as a Republican. He's a Democrat. And we became friends. This is when people could talk to each other. But I have learned recently, I've got a kind of the scarlet letter, an R on my name in Google, and I've personally lost a lot of business because of it. There is just so many pieces of evidence that says we're at a point, not just in California, but in the country, where we're stifling speech, we're not keeping the dialogue open. And I know this is an area that you're working in, but I think we can't bury our heads in the sand and say, no, we still, you know, it's still a free country. It's not anymore.
First of all, I appreciate what you opened up with on the Facebook. I was, yeah, it is better. Same thing happened to me. I was trying to promote a free community festival, and there were so many checks and balances, I ended up not being able to do it. I don't know how they're making the decisions. So it's frustrating when you're trying to promote something positive and you can't even send it out to your friends or people in your network. And so that's what I meant earlier when Facebook shouldn't be, you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to be for free speech and allow everyone, or you're not, but then you can't seek the protections of free speech. Now, I agree with Canson, I agree with you. I think that
Okay.
right. I think that we should protect all speech, and protecting speech is not comfortable, it's not easy, and it's not supposed to be. So sometimes, certainly if there's public safety involved, I'm not gonna, if a university feels there's some danger involved, that's one thing, but in general, allowing for free speech is not, you don't do it because it's easy. And in fact, there are very famous cases, including cases where the Ku Klux Klan and Nazis wanted to have parades at the Supreme Court. So yes, they should be allowed to, and they should. You know, we should. It's not allowing for free speech is allowing for free speech, and there shouldn't be 2, 3, 4 levels of that. Now there are consequences if you say or do something, and there's a consequence. If people don't like what you say, well, that's a consequence of someone having a different opinion. You've seen this in plenty of cases where a business may post a certain political position and then people don't go to that business, or they do go to that business based upon their political position. That's a choice of that business owner of expressing where they stand on that issue, but they should always have the right to say where they stand on an issue, and that should never be taken away. And so I believe that to be the case. Whether it's Johnny or now in the assembly, certainly with Canson and I think both of us have great relationships with so many of our Republican colleagues. But even if we disagree on issues, you should be able to argue vigorously policy while still having respect for one another.
Big concern is to resolve
Hi, my name is Steve Yamaguma, president of Design to Market, marketing design communications company, and I'm also the co-chair for the Silicon Valley Asian Pacific Film Festival, which is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And our mission is to connect and inspire communities by telling the stories of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And I want to address Council Member Camus's challenge that I would like to give an open invitation for the media and the political leaders to come to our festival to meet the people, to get together and share, exchange. We are also having a lot of young folks there. Maybe they can't vote at this time, but they are the future leaders, and they rarely get to a political event such as this. So it's a good chance to meet a really diverse community. One of the questions I have is, since I'm representing the arts in our Silicon Valley, what can the local civic leaders and state leaders do to help support the funding of nonprofits as we are getting cut every year, and really appreciate your support.
Art and culture.
Thank you, Steve, for the question, and I'm committed to be there for the VIP reception. I'm the chair of the Assembly, Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, and Media Technology. So over the years, I've been trying to restore the funding for Art Council of California. So from the state point of view, we don't do direct funding to individual organization. We go through the Art Council of California. So I would just encourage you to maybe apply for some grant for the Art Council. For the last 2 years, I've been able to successfully allocate more than $10 million last year, and the year before was like $18 million to restore the funding for the Art Council, which was cut during the recession in 2008. So we're gradually building up the commitment to arts in California.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I can't make it since I have a training in Sacramento. But I will see what I can do to shift my schedule around. Korean American just had a cultural night in the beginning of October 4th in Santa Clara Convention. And the mayor of Santa Clara came in support. And what I would encourage you to do is continue to partner. And I know as a Santa Clara County Office of Education, we're always looking for partners. And unlikely places, right, in education county offices or school districts, I think if it's a cultural arts and events, I think we're always open to having innovative, as Silicon Valley is, partnerships as well.
Thank you.
In the city of San Jose, I'm sure you know, we have a cultural affairs department, and we get a lot of taxes from tax revenues from hotel taxes. So our revenues depend on how well our hotels are doing. If we're getting a lot of visitors, there's a lot in the budget. And we've actually partnered with the African American Film Festival, and we've partnered with film festivals before, and I'd be happy to make some introductions to the right people if that is necessary, if you don't know them. But we do spend millions of dollars on promoting art in the city of San Jose every year.
Thank you.
Yes, your question, please.
Hi, my name is Ellen with Ethnic Media Services. I'm going to put you on a spot, Anna. Congratulations for running for the Assemblywoman. We're looking forward to having you win. My question is, I haven't been in media business very long. I worked in politics and technology before. But as I am helping our ethnic media to get their messages out for census, I have done some studies, and turns out that Korean American community is quite large. But it has been consistently being criticized that we don't show up, that we are undercounted, that we are most siloed ethnic group amongst very large number of ethnic group. What do you think we should do that the census is coming very, very quickly? It's going to start campaigning in January. We have a very short amount of time to prepare. Do you have any strategy how we can work together so that we can have more Koreans come out?
Thank you for that question and for putting me on the spot. You're right. Korean American community is the most siloed community and most unparticipating community of all the ethnic groups. And it's unfortunate. And I'm not sure if I have a strategy, but I think we do need to get everyone out. And I'm more than willing to participate in anything that I can do to help. But I think we need to get out the message that everyone counts. And obviously in census too, right? But in voter participation too. Our Korean American community is very weak on civic participation. And you know, it's a struggle for me too, because I often hear from Koreans, 나 하나쯤이면 뭐 어때? So like loosely translated, oh, just me. If it would be okay if it's just me. So just me becomes 10, 100, and 1,000. It becomes an entire group that doesn't participate. And we need to get that message out that you and your lack of participation is detriment to our community. And I want to share with you, when politicians, candidates have limited resources, we have to dissect our data. And when we look at our ethnic data, and we have limited money to reach out, we're going to go to the high propensity voters. And when Koreans are not high propensity voters, even as a Korean American, I'm going to choose to go to Chinese American community. I'm going to choose to go to Vietnamese or Indo-American community rather than my own. So they need to understand how detriment it is for their lack of participation.
Thank you, Anna. I think it's not only Korean American community, Chinese American community, the same. They should come out to vote. More people should come out to vote. Yeah.
And you touched a little bit about census. You know, I can assure you that the state have committed a lot of resources to make sure that we have an accurate count. So it's the County of Santa Clara and a lot of the CBOs. So they just form a special department on this census, because it really impact how much money that we can get from the federal government on transportation, on education, on healthcare, and many other important issues that are close to us. And also, if we don't have an accurate count, we could lose some voice in the federal government. By that, I mean we could lose some congressional seat. So it is very important. And I think we're going to go through the medias and whatever opportunity that you have, you know, to bring up the importance of census and importance of the vote. Registration is also, you know, a lot of people, a lot of Korean people that didn't even bother to register, and a lot of Korean, they didn't even bother to file the paper to become a citizen. So there's many steps we have to take, but the fact that we have a Korean woman running for the office, I'm hoping that will generate some interest in the Korean community, and I'm hoping that there will be more Korean people who will apply for their citizenship and register to vote, and most importantly, to vote. This 2020 election will be what we call the voter's choice. So in Santa Clara County, it's all mail-in ballot. So you don't have no excuse to say, well, I don't have time to go to vote. You know, the ballot will send it to your home in early February, and you have until March 3rd to turn in your ballot. And we also changed the law to, as long as it's post stamp on the deadline on March 3rd, and if the registered voter receive it within the week, the vote is still count. Before, it was like when the polling closed on the election day, and they will not accept any mail-in ballot. But we have loosened that to accommodate the BC people.
Just comment a little bit on what Kenson just mentioned. And every home will receive the email, but you maybe see so many information. Who should we vote, and what we should do. So working together with Civic CLUSA, and we're going to have the voters education with the other organizations, and come here, Voters League, and come and give the voters some education. Yes.
Right, and I just wanted to add, I know the next year is a presidential election. You probably have 4 or 5 pages, many propositions and many elected positions. But you don't need to understand every one of those items on your ballot. You can just vote on what you understand. So if that will make it easier for you to just turn in your ballot. Actually, if you just folded your ballot, put it in the envelope, and send it back to the registered voter, from the registered voter point of view, you have voted. So they will not know how you voted. So instead of, if too many ballot initiative, too many elected position make it difficult to vote, just vote to the one that you know, the one that you're most cared about, and your vote will count. And come to the Santa Clara County Supervisor District vote, make sure you check that box of Kenson Chu.
And I forgot to state the obvious. I mean, obviously, we all know the importance of ethnic outreach in our own language. So, obviously, that I'm preaching to the choir. I am perfectly bilingual. I'm what you call stereotypical 1.5 Korean American. So I can speak Korean and English perfectly fine. So utilize me. As you said, what is my strategy? I'm willing to be out there in both languages.
Yeah, I can tell you that as an Arab American, most Arab Americans here don't even want to identify themselves as Arab American. After 9/11, everybody is like, I'm Caucasian. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get people interested. I could tell you this, that when I ran for office, the first time I ran in the primary, I came in first place by 1 vote. And this is what I tell everyone. Your vote matters, and everyone that I tell that to is true. So, and one other thing, Korean Americans, Vietnamese Americans, you all have to get involved in the campaigns themselves. My campaign, I try to be as multicultural as possible, and I welcome volunteers to help me walk precincts in every language. My first employee was Korean. And she went on to be a school teacher, but I make sure that we have ethnicities represented in everything that I do, because I want everybody to feel that I represent them. And it's important for all of you to know that you're all part of the political system, but you have to meet us halfway. And so all of you are welcome.
Yes, we almost time, so we got the last question. Yes.
Hi, thanks for Diana Dean's invitation. So my media called Voice of American Chinese as a partner of these great forums. Yeah. So I try to ask a good question. Yeah. I came from China a long time ago as a private student, and it took me 10 years, from getting H1 green card, became a U.S. citizen, so I have right to vote. But as we all know that San Francisco Bay Area is invention capital, of the world, right? So the engineer, is a major workforce and value creator of San Francisco Bay Area. But recently, about 1 month ago, one, Chinese engineer, AI data scientists, commit suicide in Facebook because the performance review and she hold H1, and he afraid to lose the job. And he tried to transfer to another department. First, the management agreed to do that, but in the last minute, they turned it down. So that guy, completely lost hope, and he jumped over the high building, commit suicide. So I tried to ask, beside the law enforcement official, and as your elected official, do you have any influence, in this case to help protect engineer and, creator of the Silicon Valley?
Actually, the time is almost there, so let's shorten the answer, and then we will end today's discussion. Yes.
Very quickly, the answer is no. This is a federal issue, but I'm really supportive of an immigration reform to create a path for citizenship for many of the immigrants here, legal or illegal, or documented or undocumented is what I would like to use.
Yeah.
So, really, very quickly, of course, I think we need to do what Kansan just mentioned. It's an immigrant country. A country made of immigrants, and those that are talented, who are wanting to contribute to our society, should be should be a way to welcome them. But I want to point out that we are becoming a society where we're overlooking our mental health, and mental health issue is important at a school level, workplaces, everywhere, and we need to focus back on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We
Thank
should
you.
be finished
Yeah.
15 minutes ago. So we already exceed our time, and let's end up here. And we can continue this discussion in the future, and let's respect each other's time. So all the medias and all the friends come to stage. Let's take picture with Kansan and Anna, and we're going to finish today. And we invite Daisy to come. Yeah, please.
And I want to say thank you all for
spending
this time. And I know we overshot the time, but there are so many questions. It's clear that there's a lot of interest in
the chair to the front.